Hey folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Now, I was asked to convert someone from AD&D to 5e. Roll for initiative. I want to start this video by thanking our sponsor, Easy Roller Dice. Whether it's your first set of dice or your 1 millionth set of dice, Easy Roller Dice for all your dice rolling needs. Right now there is a Kickstarter going on that you can check out for Easy Roller Dice. There will be a link in the description. Not only that, we are running a contest that will be lasting a month. The details will be in the description as well. Win all kinds of cool Easy Roller Dice swag. Down in that description you can find a link, easyrollerdice.com/nerdarchy, as well as a one-time coupon code for a whopping 20% off. Go get some Easy Roller Dice.
All right, so you were asked, so challenge is accepted, right?
Absolutely no. So in a comment, one of our viewers was like, "Hey, I play AD&D. Why don't you convince me to play 5e?" And what I said is, why? If you're having fun playing AD&D, enjoy it. But it did give me an idea. We could talk about the different editions of Dungeons & Dragons and the differences and similarities from 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I don't think we've actually done this before.
I mean, it's shocking with all the videos that are up on the channel, but you're correct. I fully believe, and we've talked about this part before, that 5th edition has taken all of the best stuff from previous editions and combine them together to make the best edition of D&D that's out there.
In our opinion. So,
absolutely.
So what, I believe what Wizards of the Coast kind of did was they wanted to find out what people quintessentially thought was Dungeons and Dragons from each and every edition of the game. So we're going to go through AD&D, 3rd edition, and 4th edition. We're not going to bother with the basic system because really that is its own kind of game in itself. There's 1st edition and 2nd edition that kind of get rolled into AD&D. But for intents and purposes, we're going to kind of combine them. Plus, it was back a long, long time ago, and I really only remember so much. You've never even played in 1st edition.
No, I started with 2nd, and, like so many fans, or so many watchers out there, every time that they start talking about a new edition, I haul, and it's like, I'm playing this one. Why do I want a new rule set? Why do I want to buy new books? Why do I want to change? But there's always something that I'm not in love with, so, of the edition that I'm playing, and there's something that's amazing in the new edition that it's worth exploring. And every time that I've changed, I've been pretty happy.
Now, let's start with AD&D. Do you want to start with differences or similarities?
Let's start with the similarities, and then we'll work to the differences.
Okay.
So what do you think is something that is the same? Something that someone who's playing AD&D 2nd edition, that they're going to feel at home in 5th?
The way the game runs, the way the game is played from the GM's perspective. It is very much in 5th edition and AD&D, you're expected to educate the rules as the DM. A lot of times even make them up as they go along. In 5e, a lot of the rule sets are made vague intentionally. Even speaking to Jeremy Crawford, he said to me, they do that intentionally because they want the GM to create the experience at the table and have the tools that he needs or she needs to make the game that they want for their table.
I always felt that there was not a whole lot of rules in 2nd. And I didn't run a tremendous amount of games back then, but I did GM. And there was, in my opinion, a lot of power sitting behind that GM screen, being able to say, all right, I am agitating the rules. I am in charge here. And there was a bit of power that was there that kind of left when they moved into later editions.
Right, and the funny thing is you never really even noticed as you were moving through. It was only in retrospect that I really even was aware. Now, the other thing, obviously, elves, dwarves, halflings, and, fighters and wizards and paladins are all still there.
Pretty much the core of what many people consider D&D is.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main differences when you talk about character classes is, it was a magic user, it wasn't a wizard. You had to earn your wizard title, and, you weren't a rogue, you were a thief back then. That's the most of the differences. And also, now we have more options when it comes to playing 5e as far as to make up your character, more choices, which weren't there in AD&D. Because
more choices in the core books,
yes.
I would say. 2nd edition did have a lot of source material to be able to derive from, And for me, my favorite book was the Humanoid's Handbook, so I would go to that pretty heavy.
There was a lot of different books you could go into. One of the other things is basically in 5th edition, they've all but gotten rid of alignment. It's there in name only. There's no longer restrictions. We don't have race restrictions anymore. There's not class restrictions anymore.
So dwarves can play your wizards.
Yeah, there's not gender restrictions anymore, because in previous edition or in AD&D, like your stat differences were based on your being a gender, your minimums and maximums. So that stuff's all gone. So there's a lot of stuff like that they got rid of that is I consider baggage and we don't need. So that's AD&D and 5e. Now moving into the 3.x or Pathfinder games.
Now, here is where I have a lot more familiarity. The rules, only go back so far, and we did play a lot of 3rd, together.
Yeah, I mean, most of our gaming history was there. We were in AD&D for a while. Then we moved into 3rd edition. We really didn't do much with Pathfinder, but it's kind of the evolution of 3.5. So now we're going to get into where the rules. There's a lot of differences in these rule sets.
In my opinion, 3rd edition gave rules for everything, and just like 5th and AD&D talked about the power being in the hands of the DM, I think 3rd edition really bred the rules lawyer, and you got to see with that rules for everything, oh, well, it says right here I'm allowed to do that, or you're not allowed to do that, and it brought more arguments to the table.
Yeah, it definitely took away some of the freedom of the GM and gave that rule lawyers type players more ammunition to beat their DM with. The rules almost became like a cudgel, because then at that point, instead of being an educator of the rules, you're not even that. You're just there, kind of. So I feel like 5e and AD&D kind of let the DM participate more instead of just being the person that's there to run the story. So, almost like the AI, in a video game.
So as opposed to educating the rules and providing the story, you facilitated. You were there to guide, but that was about it. Some of the challenges of 3rd edition with magic item creation rules being built right into the core book. If you as the DM didn't want to allow certain magic items because players found a loophole, or you yourself thought something was broken, it's out of your hands, because it says right there I'm allowed to do this.
Or at least it gave more wiggle room to argue with. In 3rd edition and Pathfinder, the systems are very much more granular than 5e. So where you might have a bunch of choices that are going to build out your character and maybe make it different from the others, but it kind of takes like a bunch of those choices combined to actually make a really visible difference. Whereas in 5e, like, your choices are big and blocky. It's like, you take this background, it gives you this stuff. You take a feat, it gives you this stuff. Right. So one is a little bit more modular, and the other one is more granular. Yeah, depending which style of play you enjoy is going to determine how you feel about that.
And then lastly, there was both 3rd edition, 3.5, Pathfinder. There's a lot of micromanaging, a lot of bonuses that get added together. And in a lot of those cases, 5th edition just hand waves and says, all right, well, you either have advantage or disadvantage. And it makes things much more streamlined.
Now, the way 5e and the 3.5 Pathfinder systems are similar is they both give you a lot of customization in your characters. They just kind of take different routes to going there. So, depending on how granular you want it to be, or if you just like these big blocks to move around, will probably determine which system you prefer to play.
And last but not least, we're going to look into 4th edition. And I know that there's, 4E lovers and haters out there. So, weigh in.
So 4E is the most tactical of all the D&D games. It is the most different than any of the other games. Wizards of the Coast really reached to do something different with this version of Dungeons & Dragons. And the problem with that is, for a lot of people, it stopped feeling like Dungeons & Dragons. And when people talk about that iconic stuff that makes this feel like Dungeons & Dragons, it was probably missing that. It was a good rule set. It was well written, but the community did not respond well to it.
And that was pretty much what I've said, time and time again. I enjoyed playing 4th edition, but it did not feel like D&D. Having played variety of different rule sets of tabletop RPGs, it just felt awkward. Even though I'm using magic and being in a fantasy setting, it didn't roll and feel like D&D is supposed to.
Now, that being said, there's a lot of things that were taken from 4th edition and included in the 5e, which I'm so happy we had a 4e because it made 5e so much better. You know, I like the fact that we got away from third edition and Pathfinder, you know, as the main D&D game, you know, because it was 5e that really made me remember what I missed going into 3rd from AD&D, and that was the role of the DM and how much power the DM had and the ability to help facilitate and create stories. Now, you know, in 4e going into 5, some of the things we get. We got cantrips as at-will abilities. We got ritual spells.
Yeah.
We got the long rest and short rest mechanics. Some of the features were straight up kind of lifted over, like Second Wind.
You know, now we had, you know, those healing surges that you could do, and everybody had access to them. So that kind of transitioned into your healing hit dice that you can expend during a rest to heal up. You know, the second wind from the fighter, you know, that's still there. It's been moved over. You know, mechanics might be slightly different, but essentially, fighter has the ability to shrug off attacks. Still do.
And also, too, there's certain core classes that have been moved forward from 3rd edition. Sorcerer has been moved forward into 5e, and it was in 4th as well. The Warlock, which came about late 3rd edition, became a core class in 4th edition, was moved into 5e as well. So there's a lot of similarities there. And if you look at a lot of the spells and class features in 5e, you can find there's the way they're written is very similar to 4e, and mechanically they function very similar. The only thing is they use different language that the community has embraced more so than in 4e. They really seem to dislike the talk of talking about it like a tactical war game or tabletop game when they use squares. Now they just will mention if this is 10 feet or 5 feet instead of saying squares, because for some reason the word squares really triggered people in the community.
You know, you had, as you mentioned, the squares. You know, I remember, you know, having your powers that you would tap, literally like your Magic the Gathering cards, and that did give a push off. And many people did not feel like they wanted to print the extra things out. You know, it's like, oh, now I need a card sheet and a character sheet to do all these things. You know, this is annoying. I got to change my powers every time I level up. Whereas as opposed to now, like, it's a build system. When you gain a level, these powers are added to. Nothing changes. You just get new stuff.
Well, that's also a good point as well, because those type of mechanics, because it used to be at will, encounter, and daily. Well, we kind of have that because we have, you know, at will, short rest, long rest mechanics for the ability. So really, you know, a lot of the good stuff from 4e has been ported into 5e to make 5e better, especially when you mesh it with mechanics from 3rd edition and AD&D. I'm really happy with, you know, how it's all come together to make my favorite edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, hey, I'm not going to try and convince any of you should be playing this instead of something else. Play what you love to play. But these are just the reasons why I like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and the parts that they've moved from other editions that I really enjoy, and some of the things they got rid of that I'm glad they did.
So, begs the question, you know, what edition are you playing and why? Down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Head down to the description where you're going to find that link to Easy Roller Dice, their Kickstarter, and that contest.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.